Hey, Jelvin. You still good?
Hello.
Sorry for the delay. I think we had some problems sharing the slide. Uh, yeah, I guess we can start the event. Yeah, as I mentioned, we are very excited for the meetup this September, for the virtual meetup this September. We are collaborating with Friends of Figma Philippines, and we are going to be tackling collaborative prototyping in a fully world. And yeah, we are pretty excited about this because um, yeah, as a community in Product PH, we are not only composed of product managers or those who are specific to product management roles, but we are trying to promote different roles within the product development space. So in this meetup, we are collaborating, sorry, with our friends from Friends of Figma Philippines. It sounds so redundant, but yeah, and we have Jelvin Base right now. Um, he will be presenting with us on the different aspects of advantages and disadvantages of prototyping, the different impact of it, and how Figma fits into the whole requirement of prototyping as well. Okay. Um, Yeah, with that intro, just a quick background on Product PH, especially for those who are joining us for the first time. So Product PH is a community where our vision is for world-class products to be built in the Philippines. As you may know, the Southeast Asian region has been a melting pot and has been, one of the key drivers of innovation over the past couple of years, and we want the Philippines to be at the forefront of it. And in doing so, what we aim to do is to provide a space for people interested in building great products to connect with each other and provide a network where they can interact and build, promote what they are doing and their different goals. So we help connect product managers and those who want to be product managers and even people in the product management space to different industry leaders and to each other. So with this, we aim to provide access to skills development, better opportunities, and again, building a network here in the Philippines and even globally. Okay, so for tonight's event, again, we are very excited for this. We had a teaser yesterday during our tech test, and I personally am so excited with your presentation, Jelvin. So yeah, we are joined by Jelvin Base. He's one of the Figma community advocates from Friends of Figma Philippines, and he will be presenting with us prototyping basically and how Figma fits into it as well. Jelvin, are you there?
Hi. Am I
Hi,
clear?
Jelvin.
Yeah, I just want to
Yeah,
do. Thank you, John. I just want to do some constant like checks if my internet connection is clear.
okay.
Because I've been having, just for everyone's context, I've been having extremely intermittent like internet for the past few days with my internet provider. So I just want to apologize if I got cut in the middle. I get cut in the middle. So yeah, huge
Gotcha.
thanks to thank you. Huge thanks to Product PH for inviting us. Um, yeah, I'm really excited to share the topic that
Oh, is Jelvin on the line? Or
I think he cut off.
he cut off, right? Oh,
Oh.
gotcha. Oh no,
Oh
yeah.
no.
Right after he said like he was having internet
Yeah.
issues. Oh my god. All right, let me just Let me just shoot a message to Jelvin real quick. Oh, by the way, just a few reminders as well while we're waiting for Jelvin. So in the previous meetups, we used Slido to post the questions. But for now, in the spirit of um, collaborating with Friends of Figma Philippines, we're gonna be using Figma for the Q&A portion. And if you access the chat portion here on Jitsi, I think Kiana was able to send out a link earlier. So you may click on that. There you go. Thanks, Yana. So you may access the link for the Q&A. If you have any questions, feel free to post them there. But the prerequisite is for you to sign up with Figma. Don't worry, it's free. I think you can also integrate via Google and Facebook, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, yeah, you just need to sign up, and yeah, the instructions are there, and feel free to post any questions that you may have, and we'll try to tackle them later on in the Q&A portion. Oh, and last reminder, if you want to turn on your video, please feel free to do so. Um, it can help motivate Jalvin in his awesome presentation. Let me just check on him real quick. Jalvin is here.
He's reconnecting ata.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
Yeah. I would like to turn my video on, but I'm in my pajamas, so it's kind of embarrassing.
I mean, it's okay. Like going remote and with this whole quarantine thing.
But
I
it's
think
different eh. Your clothes are in your pajamas, but what if your face is also sleepy? So that's a bit.
True that though. Yeah, totally
Okay,
agree. Oh, I think Jelvin's here. Jelvin,
Hello?
hello. Hey, Jelvin.
My bandwidth. It says my bandwidth can handle the presentation. Oh my god.
Oh, maybe
how
it's
do
too awesome, man. Bandwidth can't handle it.
Oh my god. Let me try to reconnect again, just to.
Okay.
Hope it's still hold on.
What if somebody else presents and then Jelvin speaks? I don't know if that's possible, given the kind of presentation.
I could. Hi, so this is Chi. I could be the one to present, and uh, yeah,
that would be awesome.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I hope, like, for my other friends from Friends of Figma here, you'll be the one to manage the Q and A. Yeah, but I'll be managing. I'll just load Jelvin's presentation.
Thank you, Chi.
Thank you.
I just want to apologize for to everyone. Yeah. Are there any other people here who are not from the Philippines?
Yes,
Hello.
this is Syed from Pakistan. I actually
Hello.
joined.
Ooh,
I
wow.
actually saw a Facebook post and I decided to join in. Excited to be here.
Hello.
Nice.
Hello. Yeah.
Hello.
Actually saw your question, Saeed, and we can have a conversation after the whole presentation.
Sure, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so how do I share my screen? I share my screen. I share my
Lower left
screen.
corner. Lower left corner.
Yeah.
There. You see it?
Yes. Can you press Z one time?
Oh, nice.
Cool. Thank you.
Today I learned.
Hello
Okay.
everyone. Hello everyone. So I'm gonna be getting some help from Chi in making this presentation. So I hope this goes well. So good evening, everyone. So I want to apologize if I keep saying next slide, but yeah, next slide, please. Just click on the. Oh yeah, just yeah. No, click on it. Sorry. The anywhere but the title. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So just before anything else, I just wanna. Yeah, the presentation was wholly based on how I'm gonna be speaking. So since this is the first time I'm gonna be handing off the presentation to someone else, I hope that it won't disrupt the whole flow of the conversation. Yeah, but before anything else moving forward, I just want to say that all of the things that I'll be sharing are based on my experiences and my experiences wholly. Um, if there's anything that you might hear, probably you can be related to the things that I'll be sharing, or if the things are if the things I'm going to share are against what you're saying, then we can have a conversation after. I would love to get some feedback about it. So yeah, take everything with a grain of salt, and let's all be chill. And this is going to be a chill night, hopefully for everyone. Day, depending on where you are, or afternoon. So yeah, can you hover? Yeah, can you hover on the image there? So the link to the presentation is there. So it's links.gel.vin/productph. Again, that's links.gel.vin/productph. It's actually a link to the presentation in case you wanna play around with it and follow through with the conversation. And if you find yourself trying to get to the to the slide that I'm in, just press R and it goes back to the very first page of the presentation. So yeah. Cool. Next slide, please. Click anywhere outside of the image. There. Hi. Just want to introduce myself for a little bit. My name is Jelvin. I am. I have a couple of roles in the Philippines, but I'm coming in as a representative of Friends of Figma Philippines, as a community advocate. But just to establish some rapport. Next slide, please. Yes, these are the couple companies I've worked with. I've worn different hats along the way. I am currently a product management consultant at Talino. We are a Filipino venture inclusion tech venture builder, where we're a startup that builds startups and products. So I'm currently handling a couple of a project with them. Before that, I was a project manager in Maria Health for a short while. And before that, I was one of the lead UX designers and previously a UX designer in Make Technology. It's an agency. It's a tech agency and UX consultancy brand and a company. And before that, I was a UI and UX designer for ProudCloud, and the de facto product designer for Senti PH, which is an AI company. So I've worn both the hats of being a lead and an IC. So hopefully all of the things that I'll be sharing for today will be helpful, because I'll be sharing on both perspectives. And there was a question already from a while ago of Saeed. I hope I didn't butcher the pronunciation, where he asked, "Does a product manager have to prototype himself?" And that's an interesting conversation because, yeah, we're gonna be talking about that later. So next slide, please. Cool. So I just want to start off with a scenario, probable scenario where you have experience, especially if you're in the realm of visual products. So imagine that we're in a meeting and we're trying to conceptualize a concept, right? Like trying to come up with a concept, and we're all very excited to make things work. And given some strict deadlines or a date where we had to present this to our investors or our stakeholders, we try to come up with different concepts. And since we're pretty excited to do these things, we go to an initial design phase, or something that can get an early buy-in to whoever is we're presenting. So next slide. Yeah, and the designer. So we instruct the designer to like, okay, create these designs, and we're able to come up with the screens that we need for the major features, and it's just in time. It's just in time for us to present it. And next slide. Yeah, there's a little bit of interaction that's going to happen here. So hover it to the horse. Sorry. So the story here is we've done the designs. It's all beautiful. The screens of the major features that we've done look really great. And once we present, that's me as a horse, and we're trying to present the designs right. But if you can hover to the guy with the blue shirt. Yeah. For example, this is like a stakeholder, and he says that, okay, it looks great, but I can't imagine where this is going because I'm only seeing screens, right? And if you hover to the woman on the right, okay, maybe an investor says that, okay, the concept works. It looks good actually, but how does it work? Yeah, because imagine presenting different screens to stakeholders who aren't really that tech savvy, and then you try to explain everything. And if you can hover to the guy to the left. Yes, so if you're presenting different designs to developers, they would probably ask, okay, how does it work? What interaction should it have? What happens here? When it goes to another screen, what should be the interaction? And if you go to the last guy, yeah, if you present different high fidelity screens to like users, for example, so it would be awesome if they would probably say something like, it would be awesome if I can use it rather than explaining. So this is where the topic kind of comes in. And in the realm of like the situation that's happening in the world right now, it's like we're having COVID, and we're kind of mandated to have a more collaborative process, and that's where the topic comes in. So if you can click to the next slide, please. Okay, so huge thanks to Brian for recommending the title, because I myself am not very good with copywriting, so this is a very interesting title for us to use. So the topic for tonight is collaborative prototyping in a fully remote world. And I just want to delve deep into introducing or reintroducing a collaborative and communicative process with prototypes using Figma. So yeah. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, just a little bit of foundation before we head to the nitty-gritty product stuff. I just wanted to do some reviews. Like, what is a prototype? Based on Wikipedia citing Blackwell and Manar, prototype means an early sample model or release of a product built to test a concept. But if we put that in the digital product context, so next slide, please. We turn into prototyping, which is an experimental process where design teams implement ideas into tangible forms from paper to digital. It's a definition that I always borrow from IDF, Interaction Design Foundation. And what a prototype is, I believe, it's just it's after the design, but before the actual product. So it's the middle ground between something that's usable, something that you can communicate, and it's something tangible. Like in digital products, what you're using is the actual product, right? But if time is of the essence and we need to push things out, but we don't have like enough time for development, we do prototyping. So yeah, next slide, please. Okay, I'm pretty sure that most of you, all of you folks know like the typical design process. And where prototype comes in, it's actually happening in between ideation and the testing phase. Prototyping can have different fidelities, such as a low-level fidelity, a low-fidelity prototype, high fidelity prototype, and different prototypes between. It's not the actual product per se, but it's something that you can use to get your idea going. Yeah, next slide, please. And we come to the question, for those people in reality, sometimes we don't necessarily do prototypes anymore because there are people who, we're sometimes in a situation where we need to create the product itself. So we're gonna spend some time just doing these few screens, and hopefully we can explain it enough such that the developers or whoever stakeholder is going to build that can actually translate it into something that's usable. Yeah. So why do we want to add prototyping, and why do we want to put it in the process, and why do we want to add it now? So next slide, please. Borrowing a quote from Tom and David Kelly of IDEO, they say that if a picture is worth 1,000 words, a prototype is worth 1,000 meetings. So just to expand on what they said, can we go to the next slide? So what they mean by that is, if done efficiently, prototyping saves us time by communicating and validating our ideas in different stages of product development. So if things are done effectively, if prototypes are done effectively, we actually save time by sacrificing a bit of time to communicate the concepts that we want. And next slide, please. Yes, so technically when we do prototypes, we solve a couple of things that we might face in a product development process. So if you can hover on the first image. Yes, so we, relating to the quote that Tom and David Kelly have mentioned, we create prototypes to define and actualize the concept that we want, the concept that we have in our heads. So clear concepts means a better way to communicate. Okay, you can go to the second image, hover on the second image. Yes, so when I say faster stakeholder buy-in, it just means that if you're trying to present this to stakeholders and they're not patient enough to like look at different screens, but if you give them a prototype, for example, of a digital product, maybe an app or a website, they can further appreciate like how it works in the most ideal sense, and it can be a way for them to it can be a way for us as the one who are doing the product to let stakeholders kind of buy in to the concept faster. And if you can hover on the third image. Thank you. So if we present prototypes to developers, this is like one key thing that I want to emphasize, because coming from a software development background, it's helpful for me to actually look at the interactions of how it's going to work in the form of prototypes. So if we can present like different prototypes to the developers on like as a part of the handoff process, it's a more efficient way to validate it on the development operations perspective. So it's probably going to be a lot easier for people to set deadlines or like estimates of when we need to, of when we can actually release the product. Excuse me, is someone on? Hello? Sorry.
Hello? Can the person
Um,
who's eating right now
Hello.
or cleaning up stuff?
can is
Okay.
it John?
Hello. Yeah.
There?
I think we're good.
Yeah?
Yeah, we're good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Sure. Let's go back to the prototype. Hello.
Yes?
You can't see the prototype. Sorry.
It's load. It's still on the current slide.
Okay. Wait, asan ka ba? Okay. It's the one with the three pictures, ba?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just gonna gorilla this. All right. Um. Okay. If you go to the next slide, prototyping with Figma. Hello.
Yes, I
Yes.
changed the slide.
Okay. So those are going relating back to the previous slides. Those are just some of the things why we want to include prototyping, and where do we want to do the actual work. So moving to the next part of the talk, I just want to highlight Figma as a viable option and as a cost-effective tool for creating prototypes. And Figma is for those who don't know what Figma is, it's like the typical everyday design tool that people use. The reason why I believe in Figma is because one, it's cross-platform, two, it's collaborative, and three, it's cost-effective. And I'll just explain this briefly. So it's collaborative because there are two people. Two people can work on the same file at the same time, provided you have internet. And it's extremely helpful if you have tight deadlines, and especially if you're working with just a couple of pages, but we need to do it fast. In my during my time at Make, this is like the primary tool that we use. This is the primary tool that we use so that we can present the designs to our clients. It's cross-platform because as long as you have a browser, you can technically use Figma anywhere. It's both available on Windows and on macOS primarily. So you don't have to worry about downloading a tool that's operating system specific. So yeah, just a little bit of tech check. No one can see the. I can see the Figma, but someone can't see the Figma, I think. Okay.
Possible for you guys to check cheese.
Okay. I'll try to refresh.
No.
No. Can for those who are experiencing any problems, can you try to refresh within Jitsi itself? Yeah. I saw the presentation a while ago already, so thanks, Chi, for that.
Yeah. I think she refreshed.
Before moving forward, does anyone have any questions that they wanna ask?
There are three questions currently in the question Q&A board, but yeah.
So yeah. So I've shared it.
Okay, let's just wait for a bit. Wireframe versus prototype. Depends on your needs. If you have a designer who is fast enough, then you can go straight to prototyping because it's a lot easier than spending a little bit more time wireframing. But if the team needs more context, you can definitely do wireframing first, because prototyping itself it takes some time to make it good. So it's something that I'll be sharing a little bit later on. I can't see the screen actually. Let me try to refresh. I do apologize for everyone joining.
Oh no. I'm sharing again. Can everyone see my screen?
Okay, there you go. Yes. Cool. Some people can still see. So Figma can be used without internet, but in the initial load of Figma, you would need internet because it's primarily an internet-based application. That's why we're able to collaborate like two people, like more than two people at a time.
Yeah, thanks for that answer. Actually, the reason why I ask is because, in my case, the customers they don't have internet. So to validate the ideas and wireframes, I basically have to go and meet the customer and find user flows, right? And
Yeah.
because they don't have internet, it's really hard to work on a platform which doesn't support this feature. So like, can you load it initially and then go to the users and test it out, or does it require constant internet connection?
In my experience, I would if I was using if I were to use Figma as a prototype to test out with the users, what I would do is to have just a little bit of internet connection as a backup. But the prototypes can technically work um, on the browser and on the app itself. But if you're trying to use a Figma mirror, it requires some sort of connection coming from your phone to the internet. So yeah.
Thanks.
Yep. Cool. Nawala ulit yung presentation.
Yeah, I just shared.
Okay, cool. So yeah. I think we can move forward to the presentation. Yeah.
There.
Okay, cool. So I explained how cross-platform Figma is and how collaborative it is. And the reason why I think Figma is cost-effective is, for example, if you go to the Adobe option, it's a little bit expensive per person, and especially if you're trying to do something as simple as a UI, it's Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop is a little bit too powerful, and you can have XD. But I think that collaborative features on Figma works better compared to like the XD. And if you go to a sketch, if you go to a sketch suite, you can only use that on a Mac. So you'd have to supply your designers, or your designers should have like a Mac platform. That's why I think that Figma is one of the better tools for us to use in terms of getting into design, because you can technically use it for free. The price that I posted is actually the organizational price, but for just a bare minimum cost of like $12, you can access the full features. I'm not trying to sell Figma here. I'm just looking at things from cost perspective. Yeah, because as long as we can keep costs lower, it's a better way to convince like whoever's handling your finances. Yeah. So more on that later in the Q&A if you want, because what I want to focus on with Figma is the prototyping prowess, since it's all about prototyping. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so I wouldn't say that Figma is the best prototyping tool out there. A couple of weeks ago, we had a talk with Nico, who is a designer and part of Figma Friends of Figma Philippines as well, and he shared the prototyping using Principle. But the reason why I wanted to highlight Figma is because I think that almost anyone can get into doing prototypes themselves. If, for example, you are a product manager and the designer only has time to actually do the designs in high fidelity, then maybe a product manager can step in and do a couple of interactions. It's very simple. And over the next few slides, I'll be sharing like some of the capabilities of Figma one by one. So if you can go to the next slide. Yeah. So the presentation that you're looking at is actually a prototype itself. Yeah, the whole thing is a prototype. And just to start off, we've been using the click interaction since a while ago. So if you can click the yes. So clicking is kind of like a base, kind of like a baseline interaction that we need for prototyping, so that you can get into one page to another. And this is like a simple this simple representation of what it is. If you can go click back or go next. Yeah. So that's an example of clicking. The next one is hovering. Yeah. So for some front-end interactions or some designs, we might want to include like a hover in the interaction. So you can, if you can see, if you hover your mouse in and if you go out, it's actually just a change in the interaction. So if we can go next. This one is a little bit specific. So while clicking is an interaction where, for example, if you hold the button down, there's another state that kind of comes out on the front end. But you can be creative with this, and if you can try to hold and click on it. Yeah. Yeah. So currently, Chi is clicking on that area, and you have to release to go back. So that's another interaction. Can go next. Yes. So one cool thing that Figma has done. Well, it's not purely original, but one cool thing that Figma has added fairly recently is like the concept of key presses. This is an example, because if you press up, down, left or right, yeah, it actually detects the key presses, so you can be a little bit more creative when it comes to creating your prototypes, because you can add in different interactions using button presses. Yeah. So next interaction, please. Yes. So mouse events are helpful as well when it comes to some interactions. You might want to use them. Sometimes you don't, but this is helpful in terms of, for example, if you're doing a prototype where you need to drag a file in or drag a file into an upload box. So if you can try hovering the mouse inside just to show the interaction. Yeah, so the mouse has entered, and if you exited, and yeah, the mouse has left. Yeah. So this is an example of how it can detect mouse events as well. And it's very useful for certain interactions, like the one I mentioned about the upload box. Yes. If you can go to the next interaction. Yes. One interaction that in particular is specific to, for example, mobile prototypes is the use of drags. So in this interaction, you can just drag down that part of that part of the light, and it kind of just shows to you like where the dragging goes. So technically, Chi right now is actually dragging the handle down to activate the interaction. So yes, next slide, please. Okay. One thing that you can utilize as well is the scrolling interaction. It's extremely helpful when it comes to sharing prototypes that have long screens. And just to show a couple of references that I got. So the first one is YouTube, and you can scroll down and up. Yes. It's a little bit laggy on the presentation, but the interaction is actually going up and down. On the second one is horizontal. I forgot to change the headers. I do apologize for that. But the Amazon one is like an example of horizontal overflow. And then with the Google Maps, it's actually a combination of both. So with these simple overflow behaviors or scrolling behaviors, you can actually be creative when it comes to dealing with the prototypes. So if we can go to the next interaction. Yes. Another useful interaction within Figma is the use of overlays as well. So you can actually put overlays on every part of the screen as long as you set it the right way. And in this interaction, if you can click on any part of the boxes, yes, it just shows you where you can place the overlays, and it's extremely helpful if, for example, the top right overlay or the right overlay, it can be an interaction where a dialogue comes up or a warning comes up. Also, if you open an overlay, you can interact whatever it is that's inside. So it's extremely helpful for focused interactions. Yes. We can go next. Okay, this is a concept that's again fairly recently that has been added, and it's an extremely useful interaction when it comes to Figma, doing prototypes on Figma. And if you're familiar with Magic Move on Keynote, Smart Animate is actually a similar feature. So what Smart Animate is if you have two pages, if you have two boards that have the same file name, if you use that as the interaction, you can actually change a couple of features. So if you click on the shows how you can drag left and right. Yeah. Another very cool execution of like the prototyping here is with this Toby Minisite by Toby. So this is an example of different tabs, an interaction with different tabs. And you can actually, in this prototype, you can actually change like the color, yeah, or the theme of the browser. This is kind of like an implementation of Sublime Text. Yeah. As you can see, these are just a combination of the different interactions that you can do within Figma. So, yeah. Another useful feature here is the swiping. This is another implementation of the drag. This uses different smart animations as well. So if you're familiar with the interaction that you do on Gmail, for example, this is something that is similar. So within every row, you can actually, this is an example of where you can like expand and expose the different options that are available. And once you choose an option, it just executes. Yeah. And this is extremely helpful if you're trying to show a complex animation within the app and trying to validate this with the developers, especially the mobile developers. You're going to have to validate if this is something that's feasible on HID, human interface design, or on material design, or depending on which OS you're doing, it should be something that's clear cut when it comes to explaining to developers. Yeah, and this is an example of what Smart Animate can do. Yeah. Oops. Okay. Okay. One last interaction is this one, Monzo app. So if I try to refresh this, there's an animation that comes up, and this is all done in Figma. Yeah. So these are the more complex. These are the more complex animations that can be done using prototyping in Figma, and yeah, this is something that you can get creative with. I've shared a similar interaction with something like this back then with a client that, or with the company that I'm collaborating with back then, and it kind of explained how we want the interaction to happen. It's pretty useful. Yeah. So moving forward to the next topic, I wanted to pause for a bit to answer a couple of questions if you have any. Yeah, probably two to three questions before moving forward, because after this I'm going to share like the challenges when it comes to doing prototypes. Does anyone have any questions?
I had one question.
Yes.
Yeah, so once you prototype and show it to a customer, the customer would, like if you show it to a customer, he would think that this is the design, right? This is a design that's validated now, and now you have to deliver on those. So, and you're basically giving consent to the customer, and you haven't actually discussed it with the tech team whether they can deliver it. So, I think it's really like one needs to have a balance about what he has to show to the customer. It's just my point. So does Figma support low fidelity, or does or all of them are high fidelity mockups only?
The executions that thank you for the question. Say, is that you, Say? Sorry, I can't see who was talking.
Yeah. This side speak.
Hello. Thank you for the question. So the stuff that I showed are mostly high fidelity, but if you strip down the graphics and the color, you can actually do low fidelity prototypes. So these can be just boxes. These can be gray boxes or like text, just to how do you call this? Just to show how it's gonna work, but not necessarily adding like the brand colors, the imagery, the iconography, the typography. Definitely, you can do low fidelity prototypes. It's the same flow. If you saw the interactions that that I shared, you can actually apply that to low fidelity prototypes, just to make it a little bit more interactive. But if you decide to just do clicking, scrolling, or just dragging, you can definitely do low fidelity prototypes. And just to add a little bit of point with the example a while ago, this is just a personal process that I have, but I do not share prototypes to users if it's not being validated by the developers, because that's a that's a wreck waiting to happen. Because once you have buy-in from the customers, but that's the thing that they didn't see, it's a little bit bad in terms of like the brand or the product as a whole. But anyway, someone else has a question. Sorry. Hello. Someone else, I think, was asking a question a while ago.
I can read one of the three questions from the board, Q&A board.
Okay.
So there was a question about plugins. So the question is: are companies using Figma in the middle of learning Figma basics? Do you have some useful plugins integrations that are good for people like them?
Cool. Sayang, this would have been a perfect. That the topic was perfect a few weeks ago if you saw the announcements. But yeah, a couple of helpful plugins that I personally use is where can I see my plugins here? So yeah, I'm not sure if you can see my screen, but these are the plugins that I use most of the time. I just want to highlight probably 3 of them. I usually use Component Cloner because as far as I know, if you duplicate a component on Figma, it becomes a child component. Yeah. So Component Cloner is helpful for me when it comes to doing different variants of components that I want to reuse. Especially if I'm trying to build a design library. Another plugin that I use is Iconify. Sometimes we spend a lot of time trying to find the right icons. What Iconify does is it when you pop up the plugin, it actually shows you a library of different icons, and you can just drag the icons inside the board. The plugin is not opening on my end right now, but yeah, so that's another helpful plugin. Another plugin that I find useful as well is whenever I'm doing websites in high fidelity is Unsplash. So what Unsplash is, it's a plugin where you can it's mainly a website, but they have a plugin integration where you can put open source, beautiful looking stock photos into your mockups or prototypes. So yeah. Any other questions before we move forward?
Just to add to your answer, Jelvin, I shared a link of our favorite plugins event on YouTube.
Yeah. Yes. It's from Francis, right? Tama, si Francis. Si Francis ba si Mira?
I don't remember.
I think it was Mira. I'm sorry if I'm confused right now. I wasn't in the event. Yeah. Does anyone have like one last question before we go back to the topic? Or are we good? Yeah. Okay. I think we're good. I would just want to go back to explaining how, as you've seen the different prototypes from a while ago, those are all good in trying to explain the concepts of what you're trying to share to people. But it comes with a couple of challenges along the way. Because like any other process that you want to put into your overall process, it's a double-edged sword. It's good. It can be a good process, but if you can't do it effectively, it's gonna cost you some time and money. So one of the challenges and why I think prototyping is a double-edged sword is because it's hard to find a person who knows how to do prototyping. And if you can see this Venn diagram that I did, this is an example. This is the skill sets that I believe are the primary things that a designer who does prototyping should have. So first one is like graphic design. In no order am I explaining this, but yeah, I think it's helpful if a person knows how to do graphic design, obviously, but not necessarily to make things look good, but to make sure that the prototypes that we do are aligned and consistent to the brand guidelines that we've set for the company. Yeah. Second one is motion graphics. And we need to have the person who's doing the prototype should have some knowledge of how things work and how things animate in terms of which animation fit should fit the interaction or the feature that we're doing. If a person drags down, if a person drags an element down, the element shouldn't go up. So that's why a little bit of motion graphic knowledge in motion graphics is helpful. Next is user experience. So it's helpful for someone to do who's doing prototyping to have user experience knowledge, because you'll know what the best practices are. You'll know which use cases to prepare and collaborate with whoever is going to be going out and testing, and making sure that these are the things that can be done and can't be done during the testing. And it's helpful as well to have user experience knowledge, because what we're designing is ideally coming from feedback, previous customer feedback or user feedback. So the question that we ask from a user experience standpoint whenever we're dealing with prototypes is, will this solve the current challenge that we're having in this feature or in this part of the product? So storyboarding is another helpful skill set to have whenever prototyping, because doing a little bit of storyboarding in your head and trying to imagine what comes before and what comes after the animation is helpful when you're trying to do the prototype itself, because you can't stay too long doing just one prototype and making quick fixes along the way. So you have to plan things out effectively, and that's where kind of like storyboarding comes in. And finally, I see a lot of people doing prototypes and not have any front-end development knowledge. It's not that it's bad. It's just that sometimes the interaction is way too idealistic, or sometimes the execution of a prototype is not viable within a certain time frame of the sprint. So having front-end knowledge when it comes to dealing with when it comes to prototyping is helpful, because you know if this is feasible. You know, how long will it take for this to develop? You know, how will it look like on different devices, or which breakpoints am I designing for? And what I can be sure of is whatever you're designing on Figma is something that can absolutely be translated on front end. Yeah. So these are, it's a challenge to find a person who has these skill sets, or if you can invest on it, you can definitely find a person who has 2 or 3 and then just add the other skill sets along the way. But yeah, it's a challenge itself to find the right person to do things. And apart from that is like an opportunity cost, because trying to find, you need to weigh which is which, and this is kind of related to Said's question. If you there's an opportunity cost to this, because you might want to like weigh in more on going straight to the development instead of creating prototypes and finding the right person, or if you have deadlines, or if you're cutting costs. So it's just a matter of weighing things. But if you have like if you have the resources and the opportunity to hire someone to create prototypes for you, then that would be great, you know? So it's just a mix and match of different challenges. So we go back to the question, so why prototyping? Why do we want to add it in our process? And why use Figma specifically? So, and it's helpful for us to start with a goal. And I went back to this question because I believe that every one of you are in different parts of your product lifecycle, and you definitely have different parts of your process. So if you are convinced that having of using Figma and doing prototypes on Figma is something that's helpful with your process that you're doing, then you can introduce it by setting a goal, because it's helpful if you have something to start with, especially in terms of wanting to achieve a certain adding prototyping using Figma into your process. So I'm pretty sure that you folks are pretty familiar with setting goals, and you can start with something like this. And I I want or need to include prototyping in our process by using Figma, because one example is I want to explain things better for my clients, or I want to make turnaround time shorter because I can explain this prototype to our developers. And those can be part of the goal. Coming from an IC and a lead perspective, setting goals in the context of prototyping is like important as well, because as a product designer, you would want to shorten the time trying to iterate on things one by one. So prototyping will be huge help in terms of communicating the concepts that I have in mind and trying to get the buy-in of my leads, my managers, or my stakeholders. And as a product manager, sorry, I wasn't able to change the text, but as a product manager, we can maybe include prototyping as a part of like the whole process that we're doing, such that it makes the communication better. And just a little bit of story on my end. I was able to collaborate with a digital company of a local bank, here in the Philippines. And during the start of the process, they were using Sketch. And I proposed that all of the team, including the developers, the business owners, the product owners, and the designers, be using Figma. And after 3 months, after 3 months of onboarding people using the prototyping that's available on Figma and sharing how it works to developers and the product owners, after 3 months, it eventually became their primary tool for using, primary tool for designing and prototyping. I'm not sure what tool they're using right now, but that was the case in my end. It was a mix and match of trying to onboard different people, but after 3 months, it eventually became their tool. So yeah. And a couple of things that we can do as next steps in order to include prototyping in our process is assessing the skill sets of the team. So do we have the right person to create the prototypes? Do we need to hire a person just to create the prototypes? Is it or can someone in the team learn doing the prototypes? And it's also helpful it's also helpful to not just look at the design perspective, but also on the developer's perspective. So is the developer skilled enough to translate the prototypes that I've done? It's a little audit that we can do in terms of assessing our skill sets. Another thing that we can do is to review our process. Since prototyping is another process that we would want to inject, if you consider prototyping as a process, then we might want to ask ourselves, do we even have time to do a prototype? How frequently will we need to do prototyping once it's part of the process? How do we hand things off? Will the developers use the prototyping tool, the sharing tool on Figma to see the elements, to know the interaction? Who should we show this to? On a product management perspective, we might want to consider tracking the performance if ever we have already introduced or reintroduced prototyping in our process. So a couple of things that we want to weigh is, okay, we're spending this much time creating a prototype. What do we need to do? What do we need to track? Or what can we track such that, okay, we already have prototyping in our process, right? So after a couple of sprints doing prototyping and handing it over to developers, has the turnaround time shortened? Has the number of meetings, trying to explain the design lesson? Those key metrics that you might want to track. And it's helpful to have this as well so that you can see if prototyping is a good process for you, at least on the quantitative side. And I think the primary metric that we want to measure is time, shortened time, or if the time that we substituted with doing this over prototyping has helped us explain our concepts better. And it's helpful as well to create small experiments. And if you think that you don't have, if you think that you have enough time to conceptualize something, conceptualize your designs into a prototype, and you have spare time to do the prototyping, then you can start off by adding little bits of interactions, like the ones that I've shown. And this is where both designers and product managers can delve into the process of prototyping Figma, because it's fairly easy to do on Figma. You just need a little bit of imagination of how things work, and it's a very helpful process as well in terms of doing little experiments, because since there's little to no friction when it comes to creating prototypes on Figma. It's just a matter of knowing it's faster if these experiments will work. And after trying to inject, or trying to apply the process, a little bit of reflection is helpful as well. So after involving prototyping into our process, have we improved overall? Did we meet our OKRs earlier or higher than we expected? Has prototyping helped us explain the concepts to our stakeholders better, or has it shortened the time of explaining, presenting, or actualizing the product? So after doing all of the prototyping process, it's helpful to reflect and try to see if this really fits us or not. So yeah, I mean, overall, I think personally that prototyping in Figma is extremely helpful. It's not as complex as doing something and presenting things on After Effects, where you can go wild with your interactions. It's simple enough that anyone can get into it, and at the same time, it's easy enough to present to clients and do something really fast, because, for example, this presentation that I'm sharing is everything is done on Figma. So it took me more or less 4 days in total just to whip everything up. So if you have a designer who's extremely talented, probably they can make a fully featured flow of the product in less than a day. So that's it on my part, and I just want to open the floor for questions before anything else. So yeah, thank you everyone. Any questions?
Thanks as well for your presentation, Jelvin. Yeah, and I think I'd like to apologize. We had a couple of issues with Jitsi earlier. I think it's with the whole bandwidth issue thing, but yeah, we'll try to give user feedback to Jitsi as well. Oh yeah, I'd like to remind everyone, we do have a Figma board for Q&A, and I think Andrew has been helping us relay the questions earlier as well. Um, Let me send out the link on the chat real quick.
Yeah, it's also helpful if you haven't touched Figma in any way. It's also a helpful way to discover what the features are inside. And I think Saeed has a question. Can you give examples of metrics to track when adding Figma to the process? So in my perspective, anyone can chime on this by the way, but in my perspective, the key metric that we want to track, well, indirectly, is time. So in a couple of experiences that I had with the products that I work on back and make, we spent 2 weeks for a sprint, right? And the first week is dedicated to conceptualizing, refining, and creating designs for developers, and as well as for our stakeholders. And the metric that we're trying to look at is time. So back then, when we didn't have prototyping as a part of a process, it would take us around 4 to 5 meetings before someone can get it fully. because what we did is we tried to explain this and that. We didn't have the the ins and outs and what happens in between. We just shared that, okay, this page does this page does that, and it didn't really tie in well. And we spent around 2 to 3 weeks of like small trainings, training ourselves to do prototyping. And what really helped us is the time spent doing the prototypes is equivalent to the time spent, no, not necessarily. The time spent that we did doing prototypes, it increased, but it exponentially shortened the number of times that we had to explain a certain interaction. So that's kind of like an indirect metric that we use to measure for prototypes, and we use Figma for that actually. Yeah, I hope that answers the question, Sayid. Yeah. If you want me to expand on that, we can have a conversation after. Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. Okay, yeah, I'll definitely contact you.
Yes.
Thanks.
Any other questions on the board? Or
Hey, Jeff.
any?
There are some questions here on the board. One is about version control. How do you organize versions in Figma, especially for iterations or cross-functional teams?
Okay. If I can share my screen. Wait, let me try to share the screen. Can anyone see my screen?
Yes, we can see it
Yep.
now.
Cool. Okay. So this is a full view of the presentation. This is in prototyping view. This is how a little bit dirty the board is right now. But anyway, back to the question. There is a proprietary version history feature that Figma has, and what it does is it kind of does like what a time machine does, where it tracks different versions of your file in different parts of the time. It's not loading right now, but there's a proprietary version history feature on Figma that can be one way for you to track previous iterations of your work. And recently, with one of the people that I'm collaborating with, I shared to that person that, okay, there's a version history, because I think there was one of the designs that was lost along the way. So it's helpful for you to backtrack the stuff that you do with the proprietary version history of Figma. But personally, what I do is I do different versions of the file that I'm working every now and then. So it's more of a process thing. You can either use the file management feature on Figma to create different versions of your file, or you can use the version history of the file itself. So yeah. Okay, here, cool. I can access like different versions of the file that I'm working with. As you can see, it's on my board, it's every 20 to 30 minutes or so. And I have 30 autosaves in this version. So yeah. Anything to add, Anjo and Chi, or anyone from the Figma team?
Yeah, actually, I was the one that wrote the answer to it as well. Yeah. So, I don't remember if you mentioned the paid teams. Like for free, it's up to 30 days, I think. And then, yeah. And then if you have a paid Figma account, then it's unlimited. Right. I won't remember anymore because my
Yes, that's correct.
yeah, because my account is already paid.
30 days.
Yeah, some of us use the
Yeah. I mean, I
yeah.
use it at work, so yeah. Any
There
other
was
questions?
There was a question on Jitsi that says that Saeed asks if you can convert your Figma to code. Technically, you can, and there are a couple of ways to do it. And yeah, Gra, hopefully you pronounce that right. It says that okay, there's a CSS part of the code where you can actually see couple of properties on CSS where, for example, if you choose an element, it shows the position on the page relative to the page, the font that you use, the font family that you use, the style. But there are a couple of plugins that does that, though I wouldn't recommend that from a developer perspective, because what's going to be exported from Figma to code is technically the code of how it's being rendered on Figma, and it's just going to translate into whatever it is on the code side. Yeah, but you can convert like the pages from code from Figma to code. Yeah.
Thanks.
Here's another question. How long should a prototype be done? Because it might be a bottleneck for the team and it defeats the purpose of getting feedback fast.
Yeah, exactly. So I just want to go back to like one of my slides, which is like the cost of opportunity cost and like the skill set. So I don't have a direct answer for how long a prototype should be done, but it depends. I'd like to say that it depends on the context, because if you, for example, have 1 or 2 days, if you're, let's put it in this way, if your design team is already in advance with whatever design tasks that they're doing and have enough leeway to actually experiment on different things, then prototyping, making a prototype of your designs like for a day or two can be done. If that's something that can be done, then go ahead. But if I were to set a limit to a prototype, it's not necessarily how long, but how high the fidelity is that should be done. So my personal rule of thumb is making sure that the feature is fully explained. What do I mean by that? I don't want to create a prototype where what I'm trying to explain is has lags in between. So if I'm trying to share a prototype where the feature I'm trying to explain is about deleting an entry in your inbox, for example, like the animation that I did a while ago, the animation that I shared rather a while ago. So it's just a couple of states, and it's easy to kind of like do. But if I were to like put a rule of thumb, it shouldn't take more than a day or two. If it goes over 3 days, then you're going to have to reevaluate your process overall. But that's, again, personally a rule of thumb. Some teams have a dedicated prototyping team, especially the bigger ones, so that they can convince their stakeholders before actually translating it into code. So it really depends on your process. Number 2 is your deadlines. Yeah. Did that answer the question? Hopefully that answered the question. Does anyone want to add to that? I think Gio is asking. What's a good design resource in general. Figma has a ton of tutorials and resources on their website itself. But what specifically do you want to learn, Gio? Would be helpful if you can be a bit more specific so that we can point you to the right resource. How do I start? If you want to start using Figma, I recommend creating an account and just play around with it. If you're using an existing tool, what you can do is to try to navigate towards Figma and see if the tool that you're using and Figma have the same similarities. If you're, I don't know, if you're using Sketch, for example, it's almost one-to-one. It's almost the same. Some of the features are a little bit different, especially on the components and the symbols. I still do think that the symbol, how Sketch handles symbols is a little bit better, but components are enough for me to do things. I suggest just experiment. Just start with it, have a little project. If you can do the prototyping, then that would be awesome as well. Does anyone want to expand on that, or if they want to recommend how to start using Figma? Andrew, anyone?
We can have sessions and workshops.
Yeah. You
that'd be
could
awesome.
always just join Friends of Figma Philippines and we have Figma 101 workshop sessions. Yeah. Our community is always open for people who would want to learn more about Figma, even if you have no experience with the design tool whatsoever, or if you have some experience but it's with a different design tool. Our community is like open to like questions, simple questions like how do you do this and that. Everyone's pretty nice and chill about it. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's pretty friendly. Yeah, you can actually post anything about Figma, and then any one of us or anyone who's part of the community can answer. There was
Yeah.
Saeed asks Miro versus Figma. In my perspective, I think Figma does whatever Miro does in general, but Miro is a little bit more tool specific. Like back then we used Miro, and we use that because of how easy it is to sort things out. Whereas if you use Figma, it's a plus 1 or 2 steps to do for you to sort things out effectively, just to replicate the stuff that's happening on Miro. But in terms of costs, I'm gonna go back to costs. It's cheaper to go with Figma, so I'd go with Figma.
Well, it's free, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's usually what you would consider if you're going to use tools like Miro or Mural, or I guess in the case of like if ever anyone else is familiar with um diagramming tools like Whimsical. Technically, all of those are like specialized versions. They cater to a specific need. So if that's the only thing that you need to do and like you need to constantly do it, then maybe you could weigh the cost. But if it's just for a one-time thing, maybe your best bet would be Figma. But there's just the overhead of like actually replicating everything. But that's also why we want people, more and more people, to like contribute to the community so that
Yes.
eventually those files are just like shared in the community, and then people just have to really like duplicate it or something.
Speaking
Yeah.
of the community, Friends of Figma, it's actually a huge community. We're just a chapter of the group, and we have a Slack channel where you can actually share your feedback to the actual
The Figma
developers and
team.
developers and designers of Figma team. And some of the wish lists of features were actually accommodated on Figma already, so they're constantly improving that. And if a feature that you see is already there on Figma, on Miro, maybe we can recommend that and try to see if that's part of their pipeline of improvements. Yeah. So Jan asks, what's the advantage of Figma over Sketch? Is it worth to switch it? That's a very tricky question because it really depends on a couple of things. Again, your process, your environment, the people that you're collaborating with, and at the same time, like your overall process. Sorry, I just repeated myself, but yeah, learning curve. It's not that high. Again, what I mentioned, Sketch and Figma, it's almost 1-to-1, just a little bit different in terms of file management. if it's worth the switch, I think you can only you can answer that. For me personally, I've been using Figma for the past 3 years actually. It's been a while since I last used Sketch.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a while since I last used Sketch. The last time I used Sketch, I was still in Make, and that was 2017, 2018. And from a personal note, it has really helped me collaborate better with different designers as opposed to Sketch. We had to use additional tools to share our designs, to do version control, to handle the different components that we're using. So I think it's worth it. But if you're asking, that is probably a question that you can answer yourself. But what can the other designers say about that, Chi and Anjo, or other people who are using Figma over Sketch right now? I want to know your feedback.
The main underlying difference for me is the fact that Figma was built for collaboration originally, which is and it's just what do you call this? Taking the sketch the functionalities of Sketch and making it collaborative. But these days, because Sketch is also getting funding for more collaborative features, they're just basically a competition on who gets to release the first features. But yeah, the main difference for me is just the main reason for putting Figma on the web first in the first place is to make it available for everyone, open, etc.
And I also just want to add, and also to just echo what Miramark said in the chat, that Sketch is very Mac OS focused. I don't know if they have any plans to like make a Windows app. I don't think it's also I think it would be a smart move on them because, well, just thinking about it, because it's very reliant on how Mac operates, I think. But then Figma has done that on the browser at least. So you don't even need to technically install anything. But you can install the desktop apps. So that's also one thing that you can consider. And that's one thing I considered when I also chose to switch to Figma. Actually, we were using Sketch in my previous company. And before I left, I actually tried to transition the team, or well, we were just two designers. We tried to transition the team to Figma because we used it for a project, and so far it was like a better experience overall, or like rather, from what I remember, it's just things were just faster, I guess, at least in terms of handoff, because we could just like talk to the marketing people, for example, if we needed assets, and they're not necessarily UX designers because I'm a UX designer myself, but they can also like contribute to it. And for the other people who are just like viewing the prototypes, they can add comments almost instantly, is like as soon as you share the link to the prototype or the link to the file to them, it's just all in there. So I guess that's the benefit of Figma over Sketch for me. But if all of the people that I'm working with are all on Macs, and if everyone is like more or less working on their own thing, then maybe Sketch would have like an edge over that, because it is better in some of the handling of some features like symbols, I think. But then that was like so long ago, I don't even remember now. I think
Yeah.
I'll be tripping around if I use Sketch again, since I've been using Figma almost exclusively now for like a lot of things, not even design related stuff. So yeah.
Exactly. Not speaking of non-design related stuff, I actually use Figma for my floor plan. But anyway,
Yeah, I use it for
So-
memes.
oh. So in terms of Sketch versus Figma, let's see what happens, because the competition is fierce. Who knows? I might be part of the Sketch community team a little bit later, but I don't know. Let's see. Let's see.
Yeah.
It's a in terms of a tool wars, I just think that Figma is more effective, cost effective. That's my primary, um, you know. Hopefully, those perspectives give you a better view of how you can see the advantages of Figma. Yeah. There's a question. What kind of by Anthea? What kind of projects do you recommend to start doing for beginners and explorers? Does anyone in the team want to um, share their perspective? Like, what type of projects would be awesome to utilize the features of what Figma can do? For me, it's a simple website. A simple website with overlays is something helpful. You can try the
Yeah,
smart.
if you need, well, that's in utilizing the prototypes and the transitions and all, but I'm thinking that you can also just use Figma if you need like simple image editing stuff, like if you need to crop something out. And I'm just thinking about it like very simple terms, because from there you can also start eventually seeing what you can do with it. That's my take on it, at least. Like you can just start by using it like for simple things, for simple small things, and then eventually it grows because you'd think, okay, maybe I can do this in Figma, or maybe I can create the presentation like what Jelvin did for this talk right now. He built his slides all in Figma, though that's going to take like longer. But if you want a particular um parang present, like way to present things, you could do that as well. um yeah, and there's also the website and the app. There are a lot of like daily UI challenges online, as from what I know, but that's more for, that's like if you wanna explore and become a designer.
Yes.
Andrew, do you want to add anything to that, or does anyone else want to add anything to that?
No, that's yeah. We use Figma for social media posts as well, for Figma
Yeah.
Friends of Figma Philippines. So yeah, things like that. I use it for designing my room layout, stuff like that.
Room
So
layout.
it doesn't have to be
Floor plan. Yeah.
floor plan. Yeah. So you can use it for anything. Sketching. I also use it for sketching sometimes.
So you can like start using it for like, so to get to familiarize yourself with it.
Yeah. Once again, we're in no way selling Figma. We just believe
Yeah.
in the product.
Also, Taslim has a question in the chat. Like, are there any live sessions that are conducted on a daily basis for developing sample apps so that we get to know tips and tricks of Figma faster? I just want to say that I know some of the designers or developers from Figma hold live Twitch sessions, like with them doing like design jams, or just they're designing on Figma live on Twitch. So I guess you can start there if you want to see. Yeah.
You can also visit the Figma official YouTube channel, where they do almost every week. They have a live session with on different topics like design systems, designing icons, etc.
Cool. Thank you. I think, are there any questions, or are we good?
There are some more questions on the board. For example, are there plans to have offline view for the preview of the prototype created?
Oh, wait, I shared the link of the prototype a while ago.
No, I mean I think
The
in general,
offline
like,
view.
offline.
What do you mean offline view? Sorry.
Like, if you can use your prototypes without internet. From my experience, I think you can if you've loaded like everything. Like if you've gone through the flows of the prototype once, and then you, for some reason, you get disconnected from the internet. I think you should still be able to use it, because caching and stuff on like on your device. But that's from based on my experience, I think. Uh,
Yeah, I
how about
can confirm
yeah,
that's how it works.
yeah, but you have
As
to
long
load
as
it
you keep
first.
the
Yeah,
tab open or of the prototype, then it should work offline flawlessly.
yeah. You need to load it first. It's not
And
offline first, so
yeah,
you have to download all of the assets first before it can be used offline.
and it's
Yes.
best to do this using the Figma app native to your operating system because sometimes Chrome just reloads tabs without your knowledge, and that
Yes.
might remove the offline version.
Cool. I
Okay,
think,
another.
yeah, maybe one last question. Yeah, probably.
There's another question here. In a big or complex project, how would you manage prototypes? Is it per module, example for enterprise solutions?
Uh, okay. So, okay, this is more of a process question. I think in terms of prototyping, you can still do prototyping, but in terms of process, it really depends on how how high is the fidelity of the concept you're imagining it to be. So, in terms of taking prototypes into an enterprise perspective or enterprise product, I would recommend, or in my perspective, what I would do is to tackle each feature one at a time. So you have a core design page, but if you want to do the prototype, you won't put the whole prototyping in that you won't put the whole page into that one whole prototype. You would just do parts of the features just to explain, for example, a ticket, or for example, a feature upgrade that you want to do. So that's how I would approach things, rather than a huge suite of pages that you want to inject into one whole prototype. So in terms of prototyping, what I would do is to narrow it down to feature, and if you can extend it to a whole flow, then that would be great. But I would just recommend just a feature, because that way you can save time. One, number two, it's easier to do. You can just isolate a couple of things and then do a little bit of interaction of that feature alone. And that this is, I think, applicable on all types of products, whether it be an enterprise or like a mini product that you're trying to sell or trying to develop. So yeah, I think we're good. Yeah, I just want to thank. I just want to thank Product PH team for collaborating with us, and um, it's been a pretty I think a productive night, and I would like to say I'd like to give the mic back to John for additional stuff. Thank you, thank you,
Thank you
thank
as
you to
well,
the
Jelvin. And thanks to the team, thanks to Friends of Figma Philippines as well. And thank you to everyone who attended. Like the engagement was really awesome. Those are um very insightful questions, and I think everyone was able to hit it spot on. Um yeah, let me just if in case you would have any more questions, or if you have anything for Jelvin and the team, I'd like to share their social media links. So you can join their Facebook group. It's at facebook.com/groups/FOF Philippines. And you can also like their page at facebook.com/FOF Philippines. You also have their Twitter account at twitter.com/FOF_Philippines. And they have their own page on Figma's domain. It's at friends.figma.com/Philippines. And I think Chi and Jelvin also posted their LinkedIn profiles on the chat. So feel free to add them. Anjo also posted this. So yeah, feel free to get in touch with them on LinkedIn as well. And for Product PH again, this has been an awesome collaboration. Thank you to our friends of Figma Philippines. We really enjoyed tonight's session. For product PH, yeah. In case you haven't joined, please feel free to join our groups as well. It's at facebook.com/group/product PH, and you can also join our meetup page at meetup.com/product PH. Angela also mentioned they also have their own LinkedIn page. It's on the chat, so feel free to check it out as well. All right. Oh, and last but not the least, for Product PH, as mentioned during the previous meetups, we are still on the lookout for organizers, if in case you would want to volunteer and help us out on the different events and engagements that we have, and different collaborations that we have, such as this one with Friends of Figma Philippines. Feel free to contact us. You may get in touch with Diana or Jan, and you can also join our page for more info. We will be posting this on YouTube. So since it's a recorded session, it will be available on YouTube, and we will be sharing it in the product page group as well. And I'm pretty sure Friends of Figma Philippines will also be sharing it in the page as well. Okay, Javin, thank you again, and thank you to the team for Friends of Figma Philippines. Yeah, it's been an awesome night. Thank you, everyone, for
Thank you,
participating.
everyone.
All right,
Thanks.
cheers.
Thank you, everyone.
Stay safe.
Enjoy the rest of the night. Stay safe.
Yeah,
Bye.
cool. COVID is still lurking. Everyone stay safe.
Thank you, everyone.